Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Podcaster Nation by podcasters, for podcasters, about podcasters. Yeah, we talk about podcasting just a little bit here on our show. We have a fantastic guest for you guys today. Now, all of our guests are fantastic, but I know this guy personally from before the interview today. So I know what kind of a great guy he is. He's got a great podcast going. He's got an awesome family. He's a wonderful person. And I can't wait to introduce you to this guy. Welcome to Skyler Rader, host of Sky the Service Guy podcast. Love it. Skyler, welcome, man.
Thank you for having me, Rory. I'm so excited to talk to you again. You're the best.
All right, now I have to pay him. All right, I
Yeah,
knew that was going to happen.
please.
Thank you. I appreciate that, brother. All right, so your podcast
hmm
is Sky the Service Guy. All
Yes.
right, and you do some pretty unique things in it. We're going to talk all about it as we go.
hmm
But it's a podcast, and why don't you tell everybody, just launch right into it, who you are, what you do, and what the podcast is about.
Sure.
Go for it.
Yeah. So my name's Skyler Rader. I'm a social media marketing consultant. I also do sales and service for a couple other marketing companies. As far as doing their training, I'll do everything from hands-on training to calls to setting appointments, anything somebody needs in their business when it comes to interacting with the customer. I can usually provide a significant amount of value. My background is in the home service industry. So I've sold everything from knives to insurance, to HVAC, to lawn care, to pest control. That's the project I'm working on right now is a $5 million pest control company. But
Nice.
the podcast is all about sales and service. And a lot of people when they listen to me, they're like, "Well, this guy's not a service guy; he's a sales guy." And I just think the greatest compliment you can get in sales is that invitation to someone's home to give them service. And when you're there, if you approach the sale or that conversation with the customer as an opportunity to actually help them and not just sell them or hustle them or swindle them. I know sales almost is in our society is starting to get such a negative connotation. So I approach it as a service. What can I do to actually help them? And then one of the things I teach all the time to companies that I'm helping or when I'm doing a one-on-one coaching with somebody is it's okay to tell someone you can't help them. And that's what the podcast is about. So sales, service, everything in between. I interview other entrepreneurs. I hear their stories. And a lot of times we end up getting on the topic of what we had to overcome to get where we're at, what we're still overcoming. And the goal is just to provide value to podcasters, small business people, customer service agents, salespeople. I don't think there's somebody out there who's working that couldn't have some positive takeaway.
Nice. I mean, I love what you do and how you do it and who you do it for. And I've told you that's, from the very beginning.
Yeah,
I personally believe that anybody who owns a business should have a podcast.
I think so too.
I mean, the podcast has become the new, book.
hmm
Like, oh, hey, this is who I am. I'm a professional, and here's the book I wrote.
Right,
The book replaced the business card,
right.
a while ago. Well, now the podcast has kind of replaced the book. You know,
Well, and in like, I don't know about you, but I'm a part of the generation that doesn't waste our time reading. If it's
waste.
not on, if it's not on video or audio, I'm not consuming it,
Did you
you
really just
know?
say waste your time reading? You're killing me right now. Waste your time reading?
So
I'm
I
old.
do, I do read. I'm teasing, but for the most part, I'm part of the microwave generation. We like instantaneous results. And if I can consume it through an audio or a video over text, I will. But I read all the time. So I'm teasing a little bit, but there is moments where I find myself just searching for a quick video to help me with the current problem that's in front of me.
Yeah, my kids are the same way. They do
Yeah.
Audible all day. They listen to all these audiobooks.
Mhm.
They turned me on to it. I have to admit it. I have a subscription to Audible. I caved. I still have books. I
Sure.
still have lots of books that I enjoy reading because I like to hold it in my hand. I mean, I'm an older guy. If you read 10 pages, it should feel like 10 pages, right? But
That's fair.
but I get it, man. Especially, if you're a podcaster, you're already into the Audible,
Right.
area. So now on you've got quite the story.
Mhm.
you know, and I only know that because I know you. But if you can, briefly give folks some ideas, you've had to overcome a lot of obstacles. in your life and in your professional life, and you've overcome a lot personally, professionally, and the whole bit. And give everybody just an idea, because this is kind of what drives you and drives your podcast, is
Yeah.
overcoming your obstacles. So give them all a taste of who Skyler is and what he's had to overcome.
Yeah. So, just kind of rewinding the initial challenge that really changed my life. I was a sales manager for a really decent company. They were doing a couple $1,000,000 a year in sales. I had worked my way up from being a door-to-door guy to training other door-to-door people to training whole offices. And I had kind of created my own monster where nobody knew how to do the job except for the way I did it because I grew with the company. So what should have been a 40-hour work week, maybe a 9 to 5 was closer to an 11 to 11 for me. And when I had my son, I made the decision that I wanted to figure out a way to be home for bedtime. My dad wasn't around. He passed away when I was young. So that was a huge motivation, is like, going to the owner and saying, hey, how do we work this out? How do we create my job to be a little bit more family friendly, where I'm not getting home at 11 midnight, because there was days I was leaving the state to go to, I'm in Dayton, Ohio, for, if anybody's wondering. So there was days I was going to Indianapolis, Indiana. I was going to Louisville, Kentucky. I was going to Florence, Kentucky. Um, I was going to Columbus, Cincinnati, Dayton. Pretty much every day I was in a different office in a different region. So anyway, I'm trying to work it out with them, and we just couldn't come up with a solution. So I left that business and I took a job at US Bank, one of the biggest banks in the country. I schmoozed my way, talked my way into being a business banking specialist, which I loved. It was such a rewarding experience. I'm somebody who didn't have the financial means to go to college, but I have always been really interested in small business. So me getting to work with a bank and them giving me their training on how to read a profit and loss or a net spreadsheet, or just the ins and outs of the legalities of what a business has to deal with, not just the sales side, but what they have to deal with. That was a great experience. Unfortunately, I took about a $50,000 pay cut
Oh,
when
ouch,
I
ouch,
yeah,
ouch.
when I took that job. And the idea is that I could make the money back in bonuses. And um, I made some bonuses at the bank, but it was tough. They move. Not talking bad about them. It's just the culture. They move the finish line a lot. And I don't want to use that as an excuse, but it was very stressful during this time. So I made a pivot and I bought a second home as a flip. I spent my life savings on it, got some partners. These partners promised me that they knew how to do home renovation. I've got the softest hands in the world. I do not know how to do any of those things. I was very upfront with my skill set. They weren't upfront with theirs, in my opinion, but that's okay. We worked on that house 7 days a week for 10 months. During that time, I'm also working at the bank. My wife gets pregnant with our second child. And not only am I not able to pay the bills, I'm a smart guy where I can look at our budget, I can look at our savings, and I went, we're about 12 weeks from foreclosure here. So I cashed out my 401k to give us some breathing room. Cashed out my retirement. And we're just burning through that because I'm just not making enough money to maintain our lifestyle. And I'm doing everything I think I can do to save us money. I got rid of one of our cars, dropped that car payment, save on the car payment and the insurance, got, going to the discount grocery, which, nothing wrong with anybody who does that. I actually still do it to this day, even though we're in a whole different financial position now,
Yeah.
just because it's come out of preference. There's some things there I really enjoy. But anyway, so I'm just doing everything I can to save money and get this house done and get the house sold and get my money back and hopefully make some money. And my daughter was born September 28th. The bank, one of the great things the bank did was give me paternity leave. They gave me 4 weeks off, even though I was the male, which was fantastic.
Hmm.
Nobody at my old job, I had to I only had 1 week of vacation. I took it the week that my son was born, and that was the same week we were moving into our house. So it wasn't a vacation. So anyway, I got those 4 weeks off. On the last day of my leave, I go out to cut my grass. So that 2 years working to the bank, that final 10 months leading up to that day, um, I was just full of depression and anxiety. And I don't know if I wanted to kill myself, but I definitely felt like I was useless. Um, it was a dark place. And I would tell people that, if you're in a situation like that, to definitely talk to somebody, because you shouldn't put that all on yourself. Now, granted, the exact people that are hearing this are probably going to be the people who will put it on themselves. So, but I would encourage you to not make the mistake I did. So, I remember I prayed sometime that week, maybe 2, 3 days before that day that I cut my grass, and I prayed for God to pick me up and put me in a different place. And I just told him I didn't know what else to do. So I go out that morning, not thinking anything of it. It's my last day of leave. I got to get back to the bank, and I'm on the side of my house, and I have a slight hill. It's not like the world's biggest hill, but it was just wet enough that day that I slipped when I was cutting my grass, and I cut off my toe. At the time, I thought I cut off all my toes. But my little toes curled and my big toe went up, and I totally shredded my foot. When you're falling, you don't think to let go of the mower. I kind of pulled it up on top of me. So I'm bleeding really bad. I know that there's an artery that runs actually next to your big toe. I thought I hit the artery. I'm freaking out. I yell for my wife. My son's outside playing, like in the front yard when all this is going on. So he's traumatized. Telling my wife, like, hey, this is where the life insurance is. This is where everything's at.
Oh, ugh.
Yeah. And paramedics came, picked me up. They were like, I don't know how at this point, I'm really overweight too from all the stress. And I'm literally eating my feelings. I was probably almost 400 pounds. I remember looking at the scale and seeing 384. I know I was bigger than even that, but I just wouldn't step back on the scale. And they're like, we don't know how we're going to pick you up and get you in the ambulance. I'm like, oh, I'll walk. So I walked to the ambulance, and they took me to the hospital. They gave me um, fentanyl, which I was like, no, I don't want to die. And they're like, no, it's a medical dose, whatever. And then that didn't help. So they gave me ketamine, which made me feel drunk without the buzz. It was awful. Don't recommend.
Yeah.
Um, they wheel me in, and the doctor's sitting there, and he's like squirting stuff in it and injecting it. Sorry for the graphics, folks. Just is what it is. My brother-in-law comes, and he's the comedic relief. Just cracking me up, just trying to make jokes, telling me he does really well for himself. And he said, when we get out of here, I'm going to buy you a tow truck, or we can go out to eat and get some
Mm-hmm.
tofu.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to make light of it. So he leaves to go be back with his family. My other brother-in-law, my father-in-law, come, and my one brother-in-law, he's a minister at his church, and we have very, very, very similar faith as far as what we believe and how we believe it. So he's sitting there, and we're all talking, and by now the drugs are kicking in a little bit, but not too heavy. I'm coherent, and they're getting ready to leave. And I just said, hey, Tim, before you leave, can you pray for me? And he does. And the moment he touched my foot, I felt a peace and a warmth on my entire leg. That was the same leg that I had the accident on. And from that moment on, I just had a different peace about me for everything that I was gonna, what was ahead of me. So wake up in the morning, they amputate the toe, send me home with an oxygen tank because my sleep apnea was so bad. They wouldn't give me any pain meds because my oxygen was so low. So I'm dealing with all that. And I just made the decision when I got home that I wasn't going to let that define me. But I also wasn't going to take kind of my life for granted. I was going to go after the things I want to go after. And I was done being on the other side of the table at the business, for banking. I wanted to be the business owner. And from then on, since then I've started a couple businesses. Some have been great, some have failed. But that's kind of part of the fun of it. Once you get used to the winning and losing, it's just great. It's just changed my life. So, but yeah, that's kind of my story, and that's kind of what got me from, I guess, a normal, out of weight, overweight, lazy person to the person I am now, which I like to think of myself as someone who lives a full life. I play with my kids. I coach them in all their sporting events. I'm down almost 100 pounds.
Nice.
Um, yeah,
Congrats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel great. I'm still losing weight. I'm on this carnivore diet thing right now, which is a whole crazy thing in its own. I don't know if it's healthy or not, but I just know that I need to lose probably another 65 pounds, and the exercise and the current diet I'm on is just not enough. So switching over to the carnivore to hopefully get me to that next stage, as far as my like physical health goes.
Well, I don't know if the carnivore actually works for losing weight or not. I mean, that's it remains to be seen. You can let me know that, but
Right.
I do know that it's much more fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been fun so far.
It's a lot easier.
Yeah. I'm having steak and eggs for breakfast every day. It's great.
I mean, there you go. Listen, I love your story. And it's funny because I've heard this story before. Obviously, I interviewed you for one of my other
Hmm.
podcasts, and you told the story. I know it's coming, and I still wince
Yeah.
when you tell the story because I've mowed the lawn too many times. I've slipped too many times. I've gone up a little bit of an incline too many times. As an older guy, there's too many times I've thought about something slipping under that blade.
Oh, yeah.
And I've just been fortunate to not have it happen. And I'm talking to a guy who actually had it happen and lost his toe. I mean, that's just, you're
And
so
it's,
lucky though that it wasn't worse.
yeah, and I kind of, yeah, and when it happened, it was kind of a big deal. Like, oh, I cut off my toe or whatever. And now I look at it and I'm like, you see these guys who come back from war or whatever, and they're missing a
Oh, yeah.
whole arm. And I just feel kind of like a sissy about it. But it was the catalyst that put me on this path that I wish I've been on this whole time. So I kind of wish I cut it off sooner.
I think you've said that to me before too.
Yeah.
All right. So your current business, I mean, where you are
Mhm.
now, because you
Yeah.
have said to me in the past, in a previous podcast, that you are exactly where you want to be, doing exactly what you want to do.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you still feel that way. I mean, that's
I
big for
do.
you.
I have another thing I'm shooting for that I'm working towards, but yeah, right now where I'm at today is where I wanted to be 5 years ago.
Beautiful.
My daughter will be 5 here in September 28th. So five, I don't know when this is going to get published, but for
Soon.
me, okay. So
Soon. Yeah.
very, very close to exactly 5 years ago, the things that I wished I had, that I wanted, the flexibility, the income, the health, the spiritual, the time with my kids, the all the things, my relationship with my wife, all those things that I wanted, I have today.
Beautiful. Now, how long you been doing the podcast?
I started the podcast in 2022.
Okay.
So
So two
yeah,
years?
yeah. So we're going on a little over 2 years. Yeah,
Just over
from the
two
first
years.
episode. Yeah.
That's great. About how many episodes have you put out? I'm just curious.
So right now we have only 39 episodes. And I can tell other podcasters out there, and what I've heard from other folks is a lot changes when you get to 100. For me, I've just been trying to focus on putting out the most quality episode I could. I'm sure I could have ran through 50, 60 baloney episodes, but for me it's a little bit of a passion project, so I want to give some good quality. So about 39 episodes. I'm hoping to have my fourth season recorded by the end of this calendar year. So by the end of the calendar year we'll have 52. I do 13 per season.
Nice. It's funny that you're like, oh, I only have, 39 episodes or
Hmm.
I've only got this. Most podcasts, according to all the stats, and I mean, I've been looking at all the stats since we started this project.
Hmm.
Most podcasts, like over 90% of podcasts fail before episode 20.
I'm not
Yeah.
surprised.
The podcasts, if you make it to episode 50,
Hmm.
you're in the top 20% of all
Hmm.
podcasts out there.
Yep.
If you make it to 100, you're in the top, I think it's 20%. No, you're in the top 10% if you get to 100. And when you get to 150 and higher, you're actually in the top 3% of all
Yeah.
podcasts that are out there in terms of number of episodes.
Right.
Now, it doesn't have anything to do with your reach or, making money on it or anything else, but it does show you that people quit. I mean, people
Way
start,
too
they
early.
quit. They start, they quit. And it's like that meme that everybody's seen where the guy's digging underground, and 3 feet away from him is the pot of gold,
Yeah.
or the pile of diamonds or whatever, right? The big carrot. And he like stops 6 inches
Yep.
from getting to his goal and leaves. Right. And the guy above him keeps on going and cashes out.
Hmm.
And so, yes, I mean, I encourage you. I remember when I hit my 100th episode, it did actually change things when I hit 100, which was noticeable. My 100th episode was, at that point, the biggest episode I had ever had in terms of downloads and everything else. Now, I had a great guest. It was Justin Wegner from, Backbone Swag, now Day 41 Apparel,
Yeah.
who's got a huge, internet following. And
I went back and listened to that episode, by the way.
100?
Hmm.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yep.
I appreciate that.
Because we talked about him last time, and I'm definitely interested in his brand. I think he's anyway, not to get on a tangent. I thought
Not
he's
at
great.
all. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah, I thought he
Um,
was great.
he was my episode 150 that just dropped on Sunday. So
Okay.
yeah, if you
Listen
haven't
to him
caught it
again.
yet, yeah, if you haven't caught it yet, and that's for everybody else too, not just you,
Hmm.
Skyler, but everybody else who's listening to this, check out episode 150 of the Power Man podcast, because that's when he actually talks about changing over his $1 million brand, from Backbone Swag to Day 41,
Right.
and it's a really amazing story. But I digress. We'll get back here to the to where we are, here in the Podcaster Nation. All right. So, Skyler, with what you're doing, okay, you do marketing for several businesses, and then you also do your social media marketing. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I work kind of as a hands-on sales consultant for companies. There's some companies that'll bring me in to train their door-to-door people to teach them the correct way to do it, where they're not just out there making people mad. They'll have me come in to teach their customer service people on not just answering someone's problem or question or addressing a problem, but actually giving them a solution. So I do a lot of hands-on training with that. And then the other business is the social media marketing, where I create content for businesses. I create videos, images, graphics, slogans, jingles, whatever they need. And a lot of times I'll go out to a job site with that client while they're doing something, and I'll capture all that for them. So, and then I'll post it. I'll respond to the audience for them. I'll respond to messages for them. I literally try to make it where the business owner doesn't have to be on their phone dealing with that, so they can be dealing with the other stuff.
So now, what made you choose podcasting
Hmm.
in particular as the medium, to get started with, and also how do you use podcasting within your business structure that you've already laid out for everybody?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the main reasons I picked podcasting was because I could control the messaging. Sometimes when you're trying to put a graphic together or a video together, it's like I don't know if it's enough to really for the sale I'm trying to get, for the customer I'm trying to acquire. I want them to really have a good idea of who they're going to be working with. So I thought for me to do the podcast, it would solidify my expertise, and also allow me to, kind of like what I just did with you, tell my story where people go, wow, this, maybe this person's really passionate and they can help our business. So I just thought podcasting was and originally I thought it was easy. I was like, oh, I'll just click record and I'll say some things and it'll be out there. And anybody who's a podcaster will tell you at the beginning it's not easy. Now you and me and other folks, we got it down to a science, as far as if I wanted to record 10 episodes today, I could,
Right.
no big deal. But at the beginning, it was like a 4 to 8 hour labor of love to do one episode. And
Wow.
that was a grind. Yeah, I was doing a lot of editing and whatnot, and now I do more of a straightforward, straight through format, where if I misspeak, I just correct myself and say, sorry, I misspoke on that.
I love it. I love it. I've
That's
always
what it
done that
is.
with my editing. Yeah, I was going to say that too. You put a lot into your shows. I mean, when you
Mhm.
first interviewed me on your show,
Mhm.
Sky the Service Guy, you had background going, and you had a setup, and you had, it's like, okay, this is my lead in, and hey, we're going to do this, and I think you said, hey, ask me this question.
Yeah,
Right now,
yeah,
we're within podcasters right now, so that's who we're
right.
speaking to. So it's okay to give them a little behind the scenes.
Yeah, so anytime I feel like if the guest needs a break, or just wants to kind of slow down the interview or whatever, I'll say, hey, if you get to that point, just ask me, hey, Skyler, by the way, what do you do? And I use StreamYard for all my recording, and on StreamYard you can pre-upload all your videos or audios. I tend to have it's when you do both, it records both at the same time, but I'll click on the video and it's an ad of myself telling people what I do and that I'd love an opportunity to work with them and help them out. So
So
yeah,
you're
I
doing Go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's just one of the things I do to kind of have some certain, flow for my podcast.
So you're doing audio and video.
Hmm.
Okay. And then your audio, you're on, Spotify and iTunes and all the normal stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And then your videos primarily where?
So the videos on Spotify as well.
Oh, you're doing
Uh,
that. Okay.
yep. And then I have them uploaded to YouTube. So mistake I made when I started Sky the Service Guy is I had skytheserviceguy.com and I had an email through there, and I have since lost the domain for whatever reason. So I had to start a whole new domain, and the domain
Oh,
is
wow.
stsgmarketing.com. So YouTube wouldn't let me get back into that channel. So there is a channel, Sky the Service Guy. It's got like my first 7 or 8 episodes in there. Everything else is on the YouTube channel, STSG Marketing and Podcast. So
Wow,
it
boy,
is,
that's just rough. That's like a nightmare.
yeah, is what it is, and I'm trying to figure out what to do about it and try to repurchase. I was asking the YouTube people if I repurchase the domain and get the email reset up, if I could convert everything over or what I could do, and nobody's been any help.
Wow. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to this have either had that happen or
Hmm.
live in fear of that kind of thing happening every single day. How do
Yeah,
what happens
I didn't
if
have the domain on auto renew, and I guess somebody bought it without me realizing it was not on auto. And
did
it
they
would have
tur
been like, dude, it would have been like $1 or like $10 or something for the year. And
did they
just there
turn
it
around
is.
and try to like sell it back to you?
No, I can't get a hold of the people.
Even that, huh?
And
Okay.
I'm thinking, who would want a domain that's so specific? I don't know. Whatever.
That's amazing. He must have really liked your show. Okay, now when you first
Hmm.
started, because a lot of people, and I say this every single episode, there are
Hmm.
folks out there who, and I talked to a lady Brandon Lynette, who's just an awesome gal, she's an awesome podcaster. She got a lot going on, and she and I were joking around. She had somebody like, I think they tried to charge her $5,000 or something for a course on how to start a podcast. And I mean, during our interview, we both just start laughing because, I
Yeah,
mean,
there's no way.
oh my word, but when you got started, okay,
Hmm.
it's not easy to do and have a completed product, but getting started is not tough, is it?
Yeah, it comes down to how polished you want it is what makes it tough. Me, I want something to be polished, but I've kind of turned to the progress over perfection as I've done this more and more.
Attaboy.
And I think a lot of podcasters end up getting that mindset where it's like, okay, it's good enough. You got your get decent audio or whatnot. But the way I got started was very similar to what you use now. I use Zoom, because Zoom, you can record a separate audio file at the same time.
Yep.
If you pay for the Pro, you can go longer than 45 minutes, which for me
Mhm.
at the beginning, I wasn't really going longer. So I could use the free version. And so I used Zoom for a lot. And then I used a digital input soundboard. Oh, what's it called? I forget the name of it, but it was free. I could download it off the internet. I'll try to get you the name of it if you want to put it in the description for anybody who's wanting to get started. But it was a free soundboard where I could control my volume a little better and my feedback from my mic a little bit better.
Are you talking about an Audacity or
It was
a Garage
Audacity.
Band? Oh,
It was
okay.
Audacity. Yeah, that's what it was,
Yeah.
Audacity. So I used Audacity with Zoom, and then I would upload my Zoom video to Canva, and I would add in my graphics on the back end, and then I would post that on YouTube. So that was kind of my process, so to speak. So, and everything I was using was free except for Canva. Canva does have a free version, but I mean, for me doing the marketing business, it pays for itself. Like, it pays
Right.
for itself in 10 minutes this morning. I was doing some work. It paid for itself for the whole year. So,
And equipment and stuff was, I mean, what'd that run you just to get going? How'd you start?
well, I'm still using the same headphones.
Right
These are
on.
just Sony headphones. I think I bought a set of two. My other ones are back there behind me. I want to say I spent $20 on the headphones, and then my mic. I think I spent $40 on a two set of mics. Like, this is not like a fancy mic that I use, but people tell me I sound great on it. I think I sound good on it. I do use a muffler with a windscreen, and I think that helps break
Mhm.
down some of the feedback, and just give it just a more rounded sound. So,
Mhm.
I think for less than $100, you can have a successful podcast. And at the beginning, several of my guests, I would sit right here across from me, and we would record like this right across from each other. Now we do everything. Now I do everything virtual. It's just so much easier. I don't have to
Yeah,
clean up my office.
right.
As you can see, some of the mess and chaos around me.
It looks fantastic, man. And
Thank you,
anybody who's
thank you.
watching the video version of this, they're gonna love all the scenery behind you. So,
Yeah.
no, that's beautiful. Now, when you first started, what platform were you on to start with?
Um, I went straight to Anchor was my
Mhm.
hosting is what I used, and now Anchor is a part of the Spotify family.
Spotify, right? Yeah,
Yeah, so and then Anchor was so easy to use for the distribution. So anybody who's looking to get started, I would recommend. For me, I just the user friendliness. Spotify for podcasters is so easy. That's what I'd recommend. But I was through Anchor. It was free and it had unlimited storage. That's something else that attracted me to it, where I didn't want to get caught paying for storage later.
right. Yeah, I hear you. I mean, what you've outlined is, I mean, it was like free,
Free, free.
free, low cost, free. I did all the things the same way you're talking about.
And like even my webcam, I use this is my on my iPhone. So I didn't pay for a webcam. I've done episodes straight from my phone before where I've just recorded an audio file and then uploaded it. So I mean you don't have to buy headphones and a mic. I think it makes it does sound better when you do these things, but you could get started with just your phone,
See, I love that, and
you know?
that's what I encourage people to do because if you're using the cheapest stuff and don't spend any money and you're using free platforms and everything else, you're doing the most important part, which is producing. You're
Yes.
producing content, you're recording,
Hmm.
and when you get behind that mic and you start to talk and it's flowing and you're jamming and everything's just clicking, you either love that
Hmm.
or it's work. If it's work, you're not going to make it 20 episodes.
Right.
If you're not excited about doing your podcast and it's work that you have to make time for and you're like, "Oh, I got to go record again." You know what? Don't spend any money because
Hmm.
you're not going to make it 20 episodes.
Right.
But if you do that, even if it's like on, with earbuds,
Hmm.
on your phone, like you just said, doing something on YouTube, which is free. I mean, who
I've been in a
cares?
pinch and had to do it. I've been on the road and had something scheduled, and I'm like, oh, I
Yeah.
gotta put these earbuds in and rock this out real
It's
quick.
like, just go, just record. You
Just
know what I
record
mean?
it.
If you're doing that and you're loving what you're doing, then you can invest as you go,
Right.
and your crowd's gonna come along with you.
Right.
The people who start listening to you and like what you have to say, they're gonna love that you're improving and that you sound better today than you did yesterday. And oh, now you're on a different channel in addition to, and they love that. They love to
Right.
grow with you. But start.
Hmm. I
Just
agree.
jump, go, and I run into people all the time that are like, wow, I'm thinking about doing a podcast. Um, and I'm looking at all this equipment. And then the next thing I know, he's showing me a picture on his phone of like a $500 soundboard.
Yeah.
I'm going,
I'm like,
brother,
I don't know what you're trying to produce. You don't need that though.
I'm like, give me the $500. I'll have you set up in 5 minutes.
Right.
Okay. It'll all be free and
Right.
you can start talking.
Right.
Oh my gosh. But I love that. All right. Um, and I ask everybody this. What is it about podcasting itself that you love? And what is it about podcasting itself that you really, I don't want to say hate, but strongly dislike?
Ooh. So what I love about it, originally when I started doing this, the idea was just to market myself and to pick up clients, which I have. Um, but that's not what I love about it. What I love, that I truly love about it, is I've had an opportunity to meet people like yourself. I've been on this self-improvement journey since my accident, and to know that you're not the only one out there with a story, not that it's like it's not special, but like, hey, if all these other people can overcome what they're overcoming and have success in their lives and their business, then why can't I? So for me, it's really like at this point, it's the relationships. It's that opportunity to connect with a stranger, somebody that hosts a totally different show than me, has a totally different story than me. And I'm just kind of naturally inquisitive. I'm somebody who watches like a documentary over a TV show, and I want, it's more about learning. So I just love that opportunity to make a connection with a total stranger, like somebody like yourself. On paper, we might seem very, very far apart. And I'm like, man, Rory's awesome. you know.
Thanks for that, man.
So
Sorry, I appreciate that.
yeah, so that's what I love about it. As far as what I hate about it, I've took out a lot of what I hated about it. At the beginning, I was creating, like you just said, if it's work, you're not going to want to do it. And I took about a year off from podcasting because I was like, man, like I just created like a whole separate job and I got to worry about what's actually making me money. Like, I can't stay up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I like to get up at 5 or 6, go work out before the kids are up, take the kids to school, do my business, come home, be dad for an hour or two at least, like go crazy hard with the kids for 2 hours, and then, go to bed and do it all over again. So, for me to spend 4 to 6, 8 hours editing something and going back and listening to it over and over and going, is that perfect? Me switching over to the idea of, hey, whatever happens, happens. If the guest asks me to edit something small, I will. But other than that, I'm not going to overstress this or overthink this. I'm just going to do it and produce, like you said. So I've took out a lot of what I've hated about it. The only thing else I could think of is technical difficulties. It seems like no matter how many times you got your setup perfect, like I do today, like before, I couldn't get my phone to work as my camera the last time we spoke. Through Zoom, I ended up where I couldn't use my headphones and mic because I have this hooked up to the computer. Um, that can be very frustrating. So I would encourage people, if you have something like that, to try to prep the best you can. But it happens. It happens.
Yeah. As you say, I had a conversation with somebody too about they went the entire episode thinking they were recording. And
Guilty. Yeah.
I mean, I was like, it's pretty much happened to all of us at least once. You know what I mean?
Well,
So
my first season, I had this incredible interview with this lady, and it was all about faith. And she had spent some time in the military, and she had actually impacted one of my guests. Was how I got in contact with her, where he credited her for everything, and she didn't even know that she was this catalyst in his life. And we recorded this whole episode, and then I went back and listened to the audio, and it was absolute. You couldn't understand me or her.
oh, that I
And
hate that when it happens.
I broke the news to her, and she didn't want to speak to me anymore. I think she thought I was making an excuse to not share our faith, which anybody who listens to me consistently knows I have no problem with that. But
Right.
I think in that moment, that's the only thing I can think of, is that she made that assumption. So, yeah, I'd love to do that with her again if she ever hears this. So open invitation to reach out. I would move mountains and my whole schedule around to get another opportunity to interview her. But very frustrating when you think you're recording or the audio is just totally
Oh, I know.
crackled.
I was fortunate because the one time, and I ripped out. It was a wonderful episode, I thought. I mean,
Hmm.
and it was just me solo, but I was
Hmm.
covering some stuff, and I was hitting my marks, and I was like really, I mean, I was pumped. And I get done, and I'm like, until next time, click, and I'm going, yes, I got this. And then I go back and I load it all up, and I hit play, and it literally is, I sound like this, like I'm in a barrel, and it's terrible, and you're like, what happened?
Yeah.
And you go back and you see one little like meter that's on the wrong side,
Yep.
and you go, oh, how did
Yep.
that happen? I have a touchscreen computer screen, on my laptop, and I'm like, I must have sneezed or something, and it moved, and I went, oh, so, but that happens to you once, brother, right?
Yeah.
And then you
That's
are
that's part of
back in
podcasting.
everything, right?
And then you get to laugh about it later with the other guys that are, other people that are podcasters. So,
Right?
I would say, yeah, even though that's the part that I probably hate, it's like you gotta, when you look back at the journey, like
Mhm.
that's the fun stuff.
Now, I ask everybody, how do you promote your show? I know you're a social
Hmm.
media guru, so of course you do it through Facebook.
Hmm.
Okay. How else do you promote your show? on what other platforms or in what other ways, and what's the most effective that you've found?
Yeah, so I do a few different things. I do Facebook, I'm on YouTube. The one thing that's going to kind of sound like out of left field because I am so into social media, one thing I'll do when I'm trying to find a new marketing client, I focus a lot on service businesses because that's my background. And I want to help them get that invitation into someone's home. But I'll go to someone's office on kind of like a cold drop in and strike up a conversation with the owner, tell them who I am, what I do. And I always have these little pamphlets that I made. I've got some out in my car. I wish I would have had one right now to show you guys. But on there, it's got, kind of who I am, what I do, but there's also my podcast stuff on there too, to kind of solidify myself as the expert. And there's a QR code that goes straight to Spotify that I created. And I get a lot of business owners that are like, hey, after listening to your podcast, maybe we should talk.
That's beautiful.
So
That's
for
beautiful.
me, like I said, normally I use the podcast more as a tool to get in front of marketing clients, but now the fun part is having conversations like this and meeting people like you. So um yeah, a lot of word of mouth too. I've had people where they've reached out or emailed me and said, hey, so and so said to listen, and I'm like, oh, that's so cool. There's a couple guys at the whenever I'm doing like a project, like right now I'm helping that pest control company. They're doing really well, but they gave me my own like little private office to work out of while I'm helping them. And said something about podcast to somebody, and they're like, oh, you have a podcast? Next thing you know, the whole office is like listening to it. And I still have that thing where I don't like to listen to my own voice.
Really?
Yeah, I'm trying to overcome it. I don't, that's why I don't do a lot of editing now too. It's like I just don't even want to hear myself. But when you hear yourself throughout a whole building, it's kind of a big laugh. It's like, wow, okay, cool,
See, that's funny because most podcasters don't have any kind of problem with that. They like how they sound, or they wouldn't keep doing it, but
Yeah.
you're you're just
I don't
different,
know.
brother.
Yeah, dude, I just sound in my mind, I don't sound the way I sound, but I guess I do.
Now we talked about it briefly, but I asked folks, when they want to talk about it, if you've had a chance to try to monetize your podcast
Mhm.
in some way. I want to make sure that as before we get into that, because I know you've got a couple of good answers, but what you just talked about in a local setting
Yeah,
is in fact monetizing your podcast.
right.
You are using it as your business card, as your "Here, I wrote this book." It's your
Exactly.
credibility in the field. It makes you stand out from anybody else who walked in the door because they probably don't have a podcast,
Hmm.
and it gives them something to listen to help sell them on you and your service after you're out of their face and gone from the
Yeah,
building. Folks, that is, and this is a message to the listeners right now, not to you because I know you know this. That is monetizing your podcast. There are literally hundreds of ways to monetize your podcast. You don't need to just come in and say, all right, I'm going to get a podcast. I need ads.
right.
Guys, yeah, I'm telling you, you really don't even want ads. Okay. But
There are certain podcasts I've stopped listening to because of the ads.
me too.
I
Me too.
hate there. Yeah, there was one that was one of my favorites, and I'm like, I messaged the guys. I don't know if they ever seen it, but I just said, I love your guys' show. Can you move the ads to a different part of the show? Because where it was at, it would take like 10 minutes to get into the episode.
I feel the same way. There's a big, big, big
Yeah.
podcast, that I listen to off YouTube forever.
Hmm.
And he's huge, and millions and millions and millions of downloads, and he made this shift to ads everywhere, and I stopped because that's
Yeah.
not why I listen to it. It's too much.
Yeah.
But you have taken some steps though, including that
Hmm.
one. How have you been able to monetize the podcast, and where do you want to take that?
Well, so like I said, sometimes I'll use it in person to solidify my credibility with a client. And I've gotten business doing that, but directly off of random people listening, I've gotten two marketing clients from my podcast. So,
Nice.
so pretty cool. You
You care to
know,
care to share the fruits of that labor with everybody? You don't have to, but
yeah, I mean, I
yeah.
will. The revenue is about 1,500 a month, just from those two clients. So it's, I don't think I'm going to be rich by any means by just off of those two, but everybody's got to start somewhere, and it is a relationship. And at this point now, I've been working with both of them over 6 months, and relationships is everything. I don't think they're ever going to go anywhere unless I totally make a big change to do something else. But But yeah, it's been fun to kind of get like a random email or call and go, oh, you heard that? Okay, great. And have that opportunity to be with somebody. And it's opened up the doors for other things too, where
Right.
it, I won't say which businesses because I don't know how the owners would feel about it, but I've had some of them even on my show as guests to tell their story or to promote whatever they're working on. So it's a great tool either way to help with that business relationship.
See, that's you're so humble, and I love that about you. But show of hands, everybody who's out there in the audience, how many of you would like to have your podcast generating $1,500 a month in income? Raise them up, raise them up high. Oh, everybody.
Sure.
Okay. So great job on that.
Thank
And
you.
congratulations because you deserve it. You've put in a ton of work. You've worked hard to get where you are and build your businesses. And you're using your podcast in a unique way that honestly shouldn't be considered a unique way. It's a wonderful tool.
Right.
And people look at it and go, well, if I can't make money off the podcast, then I'm failing. Oh,
Yeah. Just
no.
because Spotify or YouTube isn't paying you doesn't mean you failed. I
Right.
mean, at this point, like you said, even if I had the opportunity to go to have ads and be monetized through the platforms, I just don't think I will. I just, it's like it's not that important to me. That's not really my business is not podcasting.
Right.
Podcasting is a tool for my business.
Which is great. I love that.
Yes.
All right, let's kind of wrap this up because I know you're busy. You're running, multiple businesses, man. So I appreciate your time today, and I've loved everything you've had to say. So thank you very much for all the help you've given people because I think a lot of folks out there are listening to you going, oh, okay, all right, which is great.
Hopefully.
That's what the podcast is for that we're doing right now. So
Right.
I also look forward to seeing you in our group. And
Yes.
if you ever want to, post something up in there and put up some helpful hints or anything that you've learned or anything that you think might be helpful, please do. All of my all of my folks that I interview and that are members of the group all have that opportunity. The private group on Facebook is the Podcaster Nation. You can find us. It's easy to find, and we'll have the link in the show notes, of course, too. Last question. Any, not any, what's your absolute best advice for people who want to start a podcast, haven't started a podcast yet, but want to get going? What's your advice to them? Your best piece of advice to people who want to get into this business?
So I think obviously you just got to do it. Don't overthink it. But once you're doing it and you're like, if you feel like you're like, man, I'm not 100% how to do it, don't be afraid to get into a group like ours and ask other people to let you interview them. A lot of us podcasters love being interviewed. We love telling our story. That's one of the reasons we do what we do. And these other podcasters, before, during, or at the end, will tell you, hey, um, I don't know how you do it, but this is how I do it. And just having that relationship and building, being a part of a community will make you feel not as singled out, or you don't have to do it alone, is I guess what I would say. Get into a community like ours, if not just ours exclusively, because it's the best one out there. But yeah, you're gonna find all the help you need in a community like this.
Love it. Love it. Thank you for that. I appreciate it very much. All
Mhm.
right, everybody. You have heard from Sky, the service guy. Skyler, thanks for being on, man. I appreciate
Thank
everything you're
you.
doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. We'll be talking again, you and I.
Yes, sir.
All right, folks. That's another episode of the Podcaster Nation. Okay, it's about podcasters, for podcasters, by podcasters. I mean, it's everything that we need as artists, as content creators, as individuals. I hope that you got something out of this episode. We have another one coming, so please stay tuned. And if you haven't joined our private group yet, Facebook group, the Podcaster Nation, please jump in and do that. We are also on Instagram. And on Instagram, it's a little different because, Instagram has to be difficult. And so it's the underscore podcaster underscore nation. But you can find us and we're there too, highlighting and promoting and everything else. So keep in mind, folks, that the rising tide raises all the ships and we're all part of a community here and we're all trying to get better every single day. You're awesome. Get that podcast started, hit record, and let's get rolling. Take care. Until next time.